I sat in corporate meeting rooms in the music industry and listened. Like, I had a boss once, he was discussing how they could tweak the accounting records and come up with more deductions so artists would never make a royalty. They would only make money off their advance. And his comment was, every musician should have a second job. And I was like, what?
Ouch.
So I worked in the marketing department of a large label. One day, I screamed down the hallway, we could be selling tampons and nobody would know the difference.
You are now listening to the highlight reel builder for authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, best-selling author, and Maxwell Leadership Certified Trainer, DomBrightmon. And you're going to be getting some tips and techniques to advance yourself coming up next. New episode, new review to highlight. And this is a 5-star review, another one all the way from the good old Great Britain. That's right indeed, that's right indeed. And this review is titled Hilarious and Insightful with Superb Guidance for Authors. And this is from Yes You Now via Apple Podcasts. And they wrote, quote, Dom Brightmon is a very funny guy and sharp as a tack. His guests are impressive, and the guidance shared is priceless. Great podcast for authors. Thanks a bunch, Yes You Now, for leaving that great review. And if you'd like to leave some words about what you like about the show, do so on Apple Podcasts or by heading over to goingnorthpodcast.com. Now let's go north with today's episode. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, we got another super special, awesome human for you today. That's right, indeed, courtesy of probably one of my favorite sites ever right now, podmatch.com, where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in. And today's guest is cooler than 2 cucumbers, baby. That's right, indeed, because she's an award-winning author, y'all. That's right, indeed, she's an award-winning author. We got a decorated writer in the building because she is a marketing innovator, food advocate, social entrepreneur, interactivist, and creative change maker indeed. So let's give it up for the delightful and heavenly Diane Hatz. How you doing today, Diane?
I'm good, Dom. How are you?
Oh, doing fabulous indeed. That's right, indeed. Delightful even.
Oh, good to hear.
Oh, yeah, that's right, indeed. Good to hear, indeed. Good with like at least 10 O's. It's good. Oh, man. That's right, indeed. Well, speaking with the word good with all the O's, all good intros aren't allowed to be 117 days long. I probably forgot. I don't know. I guess 120 days worth of the behind the scenes of how Diane got to where she is today. So mine filling in folks listening wherever they are in their cars or in their beds or wherever, who is the delightful Diane herself. So it's your first time on the show.
Yes, it is my first time on the show. You know what? I'm tenacious. I just kept one foot in front of the other. And I don't want to get woo-woo, but I do believe in synchronicity, law of attraction, manifesting our own realities. So, I mean, I could go way back. I wanted to live in London, found a way to get a master's degree in creative writing and live in London for 3 years, came back, then finished my thesis, which was the worst book ever written. It will never see the light of day. It was so bad. But I'm like, wow, what am I going to do with my life? I think I'll write books, but I don't want to work in publishing while I write books. So I'll work in the music industry. I published a fanzine on the band The Who for years, and I loved music, went to thousands of concerts. So I landed this amazing job at, it had just sold to a major. It was an independent record company called Island Records. So when I first landed in New York within a week, I'm working in a record company. Like, I'm just living the life. I mean, when you're in your late 20s in New York City, man, it's amazing. So anyway, fast forward, laid off, ended up at an indie label that ended up at a major corporate monolith, the man type of record company. And it was so insane. I just looked around and went, oh my God. And I started writing a book. And Rock Gods and Messy Monsters is what came out of it. So, it's like progressive. Also, I was told by the CFO at a label I eventually went to, he looked me in the eye and said, you will never get promoted. I'm like, alrighty, well, there goes my music career. So I left and went into nonprofit work. And I started with the anti-factory farm work, which was helping shut down factory farms or hold them accountable for polluting and harming neighbors in the area. And it's still a horrific problem. And from that, worked on sustainable food issues. So just educating the public about what is healthy food, what is sustainable food. Got to do a lot of really creative things. Did this animation called The Matrix. This is a long time ago, but it won a bunch of awards. So from that, like I left, I had started my own nonprofit called Change Food, which I just shut down last year. And then when I shut it down, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the leap. And right now, I'm a full-time fiction writer. So we'll see how long it lasts. This is not a lucrative, starting out as a first-time author and you're not famous, it's very hard to do that full-time. So I have enough savings for another year to sort of do this full-time. So we'll see where it goes. So I'm really excited to see where I go next. And then when COVID hit, that's one of the reasons I shut my nonprofit down. I was putting on events. So I had ended up putting on TEDx Manhattan, changing the way we eat. So I put on a TEDx event all around healthy food. That ended, COVID hit, everything just shut down. My life shut down. And the height of lockdown, I was one of those hundreds of thousands of people that said, I got to go. So I just left New York, moved to New Mexico, rented a place sight unseen, didn't know a soul, landed here in the height of lockdown. And I still don't, I've been here 2 years now. I still don't feel like I know it because lockdown was serious here. So I've explored the land, but I'm still getting to know the culture and people and, finding my tribe. But it's all been a wonderful experience. So the book I'm working on now will touch on a bunch of that stuff. Like the thread that goes through my work is search for self. So the new book I'm working on is Alex from the current book 20 years later and what happens to her. And I'm not going to give any more away, but it's about inner and outer, like what is happiness? We try so hard to find happiness and peace, and we think it's that new car and that new house. And there are marketers who try to get us addicted to buying things, thinking that will bring us happiness, and it won't. So the next book is going to be all about that. That was long-winded, Dom.
Hey, well, there was a windstorm yesterday in the area, so hey, it had to come over to the podcast. Indeed. Besides, like hearing you talk anyway, so it's all good. It's all freaking good because there's so much to unpack there. It's like a Christmas tree with like 5 random gifts. Which one to pop open? Because my goodness, got the full-time fiction career now that you're looking to build a skyscraper out of metaphorically, and then had to quit the foodstuffs. So I guess I guess it was probably too much for you at the time, just having to really go up against probably all that stuff that you had to go up against just to keep the food organization up and running, or what made you make the switch to full-time fiction work?
Well, bottom line, I lost my passion. When I started out working on sustainable, healthy, organic type food, there weren't that many people doing it, and it wasn't it wasn't in the zeitgeist. Like it just wasn't something people were talking about. So, I could be a bit of a renegade and be creative, and it was easier for the type of work I did to have support. As the years have gone on, and that's really good that like every major, non-environmental type nonprofit has taken on some type of sustainable food thing. But it just gets down to money and ego, and even the nonprofit world. I felt like Sisyphus. So I felt like I kept pushing the boulder up the hill and it kept rolling back down on top of me. And I kept pushing the boat. So I don't know if growing out of it is the correct term, because I have a consulting company I just haven't pursued getting gigs because I'm writing, but I can still consult in the food space because I know it so well. I just don't feel that I can contribute the way I used to. And also, I'm older and there is a generational shift going on in a lot of places. So, a whole new generation of people have come into the movement as they should. And I also got very frustrated because the people I saw that were really doing the work on the ground did not get the funding. The millions of dollars tend to go to large nonprofits that have these. I mean, I was in one in New York City and it's a skyscraper. Like, you're a nonprofit? Like, oh my God, spend this money feeding people or like, saving the world, but not on your freaking skyscraper in Manhattan. So I got disillusioned maybe and lost my passion. So that was good. I mean, I think change is good. So I had published Rock Gods. It was called Rock Gods of Oct back in 2008, just out of sheer frustration because I couldn't find a publisher. And a friend who I lost contact with like 20 years ago reconnected and said, Diane, I just read your book and I had to get in touch. Like, I just shut the cover and I just quit my job. She's like, I'm so inspired. I'm going out to do what I've always meant to do. I don't want to work in an office anymore. And there is that whole quiet quitting movement, which I completely understand. And I think COVID might have been a factor for me also because I'm like, life is short and I'm also getting older and I just don't want to spend my life doing stuff I don't like, or having people treat me like crap. So the UN put out a report recently and it's like 40% of people still experience workplace violence. And that's not necessarily physical violence. It does include it, but it does not, but it's also like gaslighting and verbal. And, I went through a lot of that. And I think when I went I expected it in music, but when I went to the nonprofit world, I was not expecting what I experienced. And I'm holistic in that the work I do has to have meaning, like inner meaning, spiritual meaning, not just trying to help people be able to feed themselves. So when she did that, I just didn't have the passion for food. I had organized events, like I had done the TEDx event for years. So I had partnered with a colleague in Italy. We were going to put on a big event, a food event here in New Mexico, and Delta hit. So I scaled it back. I would just do national, and then Omicron hit. Like, the universe is telling me something. So it is time to pack it up and try something new. And I also think because I had left New York, I completely changed like my geography and my physical, that it was time to just do a complete professional shift. So here I am, Dom, sitting in my apartment in Santa Fe, looking at the mountains and the birds coming to my feeder, and I'm loving it.
Sweet. That's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. So speaking of feeding your creativity indeed. So my goodness, being able to jump all those multiple ships and to be able to finally land in your magical creativity writing nested date. So my goodness, so the wonderful Rock Gods book, it's now even shinier than ever and it's got awards. So my goodness, what was it like having to polish up the book again and really put it back out there for the world to devour even more?
So I didn't even think about how to publish it. I knew I was going to indie publish, and it's not called self-publishing anymore. It's indie publishing, just so you know. And I say that because I worked at an indie label, and in music, indie bands, indie music labels, it's all the norm. Like, it's just accepted. So indie publishing is just now coming into its own. So when my friend told me, and she said, you have because I had said it's a satire on the demise of the corporate music industry, and she said no. She said this is one person's search for self. You've got the angle wrong. It's set in a record company, but it's really about search for self. And I was like, oh, and I'm like, I'm unhappy with the work I was doing. I'm like, let's just jump in. Let me publish it. I'll learn about the publishing world. And I have to tell you, I've never worked harder in my life. So for anyone who wants to indie publish, I will say it's a lot of work, if you want to do it properly. I'm just now figuring out who to pay to do what. Like, for example, Amazon ads. I tried for 3 months. I can't figure them out. So I'm testing it with a company. I gave that not a lot of money, like $100, but to try to do Amazon ads because I can't figure it out. And there's some stuff is just so complicated. You have to sort of figure out what you want to do. As to the awards, I had read, this is the other thing, tip, don't listen to what you read or see on YouTube all the time. Some of the stuff out there is good, but I would read, don't apply for awards. You're not going to sell books. They're a waste of time. And you usually have to pay, to a fee to enter. And I was like, you know what? Let me try a couple. And, it is an ego boost. I mean, it is validation of the work that you've done, but also it's a way to open doors to, let's say, get on a panel. So it's not like I've seen an increase in book sales, but I have a lot more opportunity, and it's that cumulative effect. So I just became a finalist in another book award, which you don't have information on yet because it just happened a couple of days ago. And so this is all great. So as it builds and builds, from a marketing perspective, it's only good. So it's it's exciting, but you have no idea. It's so much work. Like I haven't felt this excited. I haven't felt this excited since I started in food, because I think that the indie publishing scene is a bit of the Wild West right now, and it's just on the cusp. And I'm glad to be in it before it becomes corporatized, which it probably will soon.
Oh yeah, definitely hear you. Definitely hear you indeed.
Yeah, and the other thing I do want to mention for people who indie publish, you need to look at yourself as an entrepreneur. Like you are an entrepreneur. I mentored startups in the food space for years, and I saw like you don't expect to make money for 5 years. I mean, they do look for investors. I saved up money, so I invested in myself. I prefer that. I'm debt adverse, so I don't like to be in debt. But if you look at yourself like, okay, I'm a startup, this is my product, and I know it sounds horrible, but your book is your product, and I've got to get my product out. So realistically, the first book, it's like winning the lottery, but you could have a bestseller. But it's the second and the third and the fourth book are what really get an author going, and then your backlist will sell. So every book you write is important. It's just that it can take longer than people might think. So it's really about having tenacity, which is one thing I'm very, very, very grateful I have, is I just keep powering forward. You don't give up. Like if you believe in yourself as a writer. Now, having said that, the flip side is so many people write a draft, think it's a book, and throw it up as an ebook. I have read so many poorly written but good stories, books that are never going to get anywhere, but the stories are good. So if the writer takes the time to learn the craft, they have potential. But just because you write a first draft does not mean you've written a book. The writing only starts in the editing phase. And any writer will understand that. Like any writer who's spent time to edit and to really polish a book. It's not just dumping it on paper and throwing it on Amazon.
Oh yeah, you're definitely right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's true. It's like, hey, especially when you work with an actual editor, professional editor, they'll ask you some questions, and then they'll probably scratch out a whole bunch of stuff and be like, all right, the heck is this sentence? Okay, what do you mean by this? And it's like, oh, time to clarify some thoughts and some thinking and put out the real polished product out there. That's right, indeed. You'll have your full Michelangelo statue as opposed to the just random block, or should I say random blob of marble.
Right. No, right. And it's a thing like viewpoint. I read this, I started reading this one book, and the gentleman flipped viewpoints like 3 times on the first page. And you just don't do that because the reader will, I lost interest. Like I didn't get past like the second page. And if anyone listening is a writer and you don't know what a viewpoint is, learn it, and it's very simple when you get it, but before you know about it, you're going to be writing from different people's heads and have different people's thoughts, and you can't. Like if I'm the viewpoint character, I can't say Dom felt sad about what I said because I can't get in your head. I can show it. So if I see it from my eyes, then I can show your sadness, but I have to the viewpoint character, everything happens from the viewpoint character. And when you start switching around, a reader might not understand viewpoint, but they're going to get lost and they're going to lose interest and they're not going to stick with the book. And that's like very simple things. So, I'm the first to say, because I got a master's in creative writing, I'm the first to say you do not need a master's. You do not even need an undergrad, but you need to take courses and you need to read books and you need to learn the craft. If eh, if you want to have a sustained career, I mean, if you're shooting out books once a month and you find an audience that'll read your first drafts, then great, man, go for it. But I don't consider that writing. I consider that just putting words out.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Because hey, it's all good if you want to put words out there, but just make sure it's not crap. That's right indeed. Although a lot of people are like, forget it. Let's put the crap out there. See what sticks to the wall.
Right. And you know what? And if that's a person's marketing angle and that's their thing, do it. I mean, you'll learn by writing. It's people who get frustrated and angry that their book's not a bestseller when the viewpoints are off, or the scene and structure's not going right, or the characters aren't developed properly. And look, I mean, I don't know if you look through my book at all, but my book is not everyone's cup of tea. It's absurdist, it's satire, but I spent 5.5 years. I didn't have the money for an editor, but I had a great writing group. We went through it word by word, line by line. I did 5 major rewrites. So it took 5 years, 5.5 years to write the thing. I'm just accepting that now. I thought I could be quicker with this current book I'm working on, and I'm hoping I can get it to 2 or 3 years, but it just takes time. Now, I know there are writers who write much faster, and I think once you write long enough, it becomes easier. And I don't want to disparage anyone from writing. I mean, write, just understand that very, very, very few people, some people can, very few people can write a completed book in one draft. That's all. And that's the thing too, is if you aren't able to afford an editor, because nowadays I'm in a women's writing group and women in there have written books and they've all paid multiple thousands of dollars on editors, and they're all looking to go to a major publishing company. Like publishers and agents now expect your book to be edited before you start submitting, for it to be published traditionally. So either traditional or indie, most people need editors before they can even get in the door. And to follow up with that, if you're like me and you just don't have the money and you can't afford an editor, find a writing group. Like I have a Substack called Next Draft, and I just wrote about writing groups. Finding the right writing group where you sync with other personalities, preferably within your genre. You need to have somebody who does understand books. Like I think a couple people had published or had worked with editors in my group. You need to have people who know enough about the craft that they can point out areas that need to be edited or rewritten or looked at. So you can do it without an editor. I don't advise it, but there's a reality. Everybody should be able to write. It should not matter how much money you have in the bank. But finding a group of people who can help you edit and go through it is essential, in my opinion, to have. And this is the thing, is I'm not criticizing someone who publishes a first draft. It's just I've read more than I realized, like really good stories that just weren't written well. And so people have a lot of potential. They just need to take a little more time to build their skill set so they can get that story out to the world.
Heck yeah, that's right indeed. Got to hit that gym. Got to hit them weights, them writing weights indeed. That's right indeed. That's right. Indeed. And that's coming from a person who has her master's, y'all. That's right, indeed. She's like, yeah, build up your skill set, y'all. That's right, indeed. Join the right writing group. That's right, indeed. And join her Substack. That's right, indeed. You'll get all the footlongs you can say grace over. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right. You
Yeah,
will
and
eat fresh.
well, don't be intimidated by a degree thing and schooling or whatever. That's not, you can get a college degree on the internet, like, not, you don't need a certificate. Just, I still watch YouTube videos. I have books that I'm rereading and going through, and and I studied this. I've already written a book, but I'm going back to square one and reading about viewpoint and scene and sequel and stimulus and response, and how to structure a scene, and et cetera, how to build a character. I mean, it can get overwhelming, but I think that this is not a craft you ever conquer, let's say. It's a skill where you always need to keep learning. And then there's even, you get to things like book covers. I didn't realize that certain genres of certain things are expected for book covers. That's the other thing that's crucially important, is the book cover. People do judge a book by its cover. So if you don't have a good book cover, you're really making it more difficult to get your book out there. So that's another expense. Or you maybe, if you have a skill, you can swap it with a designer who could do your book. The free ones, like if you go on Amazon, I don't know if they do it for print, but I know for ebooks they have a book cover generator. I did that. Like, I was looking at, I republished the ebook of, or I'd never done an ebook for Rock Gods of Rock. And man, the cover was horrible. I'm not a designer. That's the other thing. Know your skills, know your skill set, and then find people to help with stuff you're not good at.
That's right, indeed. She's definitely right, indeed. You're so right about that book cover too, and then heck, even paying attention to other books in your genre. Because past guest Jeff Elkins, he in his mind he wrote urban fantasy because it was taking place in an urban setting. But when a friend of his pointed out that look at your covers and look at what's actually in there, it's like you're definitely not in the urban fantasy, pal.
Right. Right. No, that's true. And that, and if you are targeting yourself to the wrong market and you don't know it, it's sort of shooting yourself in the foot. It's going to make it much, much harder.
That's right,
And
indeed.
that's what makes this all so much fun. Like right now, Dom, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll try this. I'll try that. But it's like there's book bub, book sweeps, book funnel, fussy librarian, missing a bunch of them. But there's all these things, and every time I meet someone who has published a book, oh, have you done that? And I started, oh, I'll try that. Oh, so my latest was book sweeps. I still don't know what it is. I think it's to help build your email list, but you have to have book funnel, which is where you put your ARC, your advanced reader copy, or you put an EPUB. So you put a copy of your book up, and it's sort of, that's a way to get it out. So they link, but it's just, I'm like, I don't know if this is worth it. But there's a million of them. I did a virtual blog tour when my book came out because I thought, well, that'll be good. And it's a company, and it was a lot of money. And it was like 14 different blogs, but I had no way of knowing what they were like before I got there, and just wasn't, it was a lot of work because I did a package where I was writing original articles for the blogs or being interviewed, like like handwritten text, not audio. Audio is easier, but it took so much time, and I got like Goodreads followers, but it didn't really turn into sales. But now I know that, if I do a virtual blog tour again, I'm going to set it up myself and research the blogs. And that again takes a lot of time, but I'm glad I did it. So I think for somebody who's indie publishing for the first time, well, to start with, you have to market your book. You can't just stick it out there and think it's going to sell. I don't want to say it won't sell. Okay, 1 in 6 billion maybe will take off and sell, but you have to have a marketing plan. And when you start researching it, you'll be like me, and I get dizzy. I mean, I've told people I should have stock in Kleenex. I have cried
Yeah.
boxes full of Kleenex out of frustration. But that's how you learn. And like I had said at the beginning, I'm now learning what to pass off and what I can. So I just invested a bit in a company that will do TikTok videos because I don't understand TikTok. I don't know TikTok. I don't believe my book is a TikTok thing, but they're going to create the videos and they're going to like do the thing. And then we'll see. Like if I get a lot of traction on it, then I'll focus on TikTok. But I can't, I don't have the energy or the time left in my life to learn a new platform like TikTok. And again, because I'm not in my 20s or 30s, it doesn't interest me as much. But Book Talk is so, I mean, I think that's how Colleen Hoover, who's probably the most popular writer on the planet right now, that's how she got her big break, is she really took off on Book Talk. So, it's experimenting. I actually think my audience probably are not Amazon fans. So how do you find your audience on Google Play or Apple Books, which I do think is probably more. And I have not answered yet. So like I said, it's exciting, but it's like, whoa, I'm getting a PhD right now in book marketing without, without a certificate, but I'm going to be an expert in this in a year or two.
Sweet. That's right indeed. Because the D comes before the E. Because Diane's an expert, baby. I love to say it. That's right indeed.
Not an expert. I'm doing what they say don't do. I'm sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall because I've watched so many YouTube videos and I've read so many articles and they contradict each other, and I just have in the end you sort of got to figure it out for yourself. I mean, there's some great writers out there sharing what they're doing and they're helpful, but just doesn't always, I don't know, you got to forge your own path. So I would say if you're not an entrepreneur, I'm sure there's book marketing companies out there. The only thing I have found when I've tried that type of thing in food, I've never got the success. I don't know. You know what, Dom? I'm a control freak. I need to do it myself. I also believe that if you do like your first book yourself, you can then learn enough to know questions to ask or what to look for if later on you decide to either go traditionally published or hire a marketing company. You'll then understand, what to do or what to look for, what to ask for. Otherwise, you're going to be just completely lost and you're going to wonder why nothing's happening and you've paid thousands of dollars to some company and you've had 5 book sales. And if you don't sort of understand what they're doing and what companies are going to and the avenues they're going down, you might not have the sales or the impact that you want to have. And bottom line is, first book, it hurt and I denied it. It's very hard to make a living off your first book. You have to look at it as a product launch, and that's the second or third or fourth product. And I'm sorry to turn creative work into a product, but when you get to marketing, it is.
And no need to apologize because it's fact. It ain't no fiction, even though you got some fiction novels.
Haha.
Corn cobs just appear when they're not even meant to appear. Oh well. Anyways, but yeah, the entrepreneurship thing is definitely a requirement. Definitely gotta see yourself as a business. Gotta have the entrepreneurial mind indeed. Because you're so right out there. Because it's like, oh yeah. Because the thing is, your first book, it's great to put it out there, and I'm pretty sure you've heard multiple times already that you should give your first book away and put it in a funnel, and then use your other books to sell that first book and all the other good stuff. So my goodness, has any of your past experience in the music industry tied in at all to your now career in fiction novel writing at all? Has any of that helped out?
Oh, 100%. I mean, uh, I won't go to a traditional publisher because I sat in corporate meeting rooms in the music industry and listened. Like I had a boss once, he was discussing how they could tweak the accounting records and come up with more deductions so artists would never make a royalty. They would only make money off their advance. And his comment was, every musician should have a second job. And I was like, what?
Ouch.
So I also I worked in the marketing department of a large label. One day I screamed down the hallway, we could be selling tampons and nobody would know the difference. Dead silence. Just dead silence. It was, so not everyone. Okay, I want to preface this. There are really great people who work in music. I am not talking about the bands. The bands were amazing. I'm talking about within a corporate indie labels. Some of them were amazing. Within the corporate structure, there was a lot of white men in corner offices. I mean, there was one, he was like a senior VP. I don't think he'd even ever listened to the radio growing up. Like, just don't have a clue. It's the cliches are all true. So because of that, because I had a boss who spent all her time buying a house when she had 40 artists she was supposed to be marketing, but she spent her whole day looking at houses and trying to buy a house. That's what's happening. And they're going to tell you, the creator, oh yeah, we've done this. And like, they're not, their hearts aren't in it. So don't like, and I know traditional publishing, there's a reason it's falling apart. It's become so corporatized. And again, don't get me wrong, there are agents, there are editors, there are some people in publishing companies who are phenomenal, but a lot are left. And I think it's just become about money. And I've heard today, if you want to be traditionally published, you have to have a massive following at a minimum, massive, massive following, or you have to be famous. And that's it. So if you're just a regular person, if you've written a book, odds are to get into one of the big five, it's very slim. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's very slim. There's smaller independent presses. There's some that are great. There are some that are scams, which is why the term self-publishing or hybrid publishing now is the one you have to be careful about. There are some great ones, but I'm not going to say who it is. There is a company which is very reputable and I really like them, but they've started like an indie publishing arm, and someone I know had written a book and they had contacted her. They wanted her to pay them $10,000 just to publish the book.
Oh no.
Yeah, and that's sort of how it's going. And you still don't have to market it yourself. So why not just go on Amazon? I mean, look, I say that, okay. I hesitate now a bit more when I say that because it is so much work. But I just saw the lack of soul in corporate music. And I know I'm projecting and extrapolating, but it cannot be any different, or traditional publishing would not be falling apart. So I tell everyone, I highly recommend that you do it yourself. The other thing is, you get an agent, they're going to take 15 or 20% of your royalties. And your royalties from the traditional publisher, you'll make maybe $1 off your book. So I think you get like 10%, 15%. And of that 10 or 50%, 15 or 20% is going to the agent. So basically you're making nothing. You're not making. So if you're selling over $1 million a month, which I have access to Amazon to see how much books make, and Where the Crawdads Sing was grossing over $1 million a month in the US on Amazon, just Amazon alone. So if you're that type of book, then yeah, it'll filter down and you'll make a decent income. But you can be making $1 off a book, or you could be making over $5 per book if you do it yourself. Again, there is work involved. It's not like you just put it out and it sells. But at the traditional publisher, they're going to do your launch, so you do have that behind you. You do have a little buildup, so they are going to invest some money in you. But after that, it's up to you. I have another friend who just published a book. It's a nonfiction book, but I asked her, I said, how's the marketing going? Are they doing anything? She said, no, not a thing. I said, yeah. I said, you got to market yourself these days. And she just didn't. She still had that old traditional, once you get in with a big publisher, they'll do it all for you. Those days are gone. Unless you're Prince Harry. So I was searching for my book on sites around the world, right? So there's a million different sites. Every single online bookstore I went to, Prince Harry, Prince Harry, Prince Harry. So he probably made $1 billion off his first week launch, because he was at the front of every book retailer everywhere. So if you're Prince Harry, go for it, If you're Diane Hatz, just know it's going to be the long haul that pays off.
Heck yeah, indeed. Definitely the long haul that pays off indeed. So speaking of long haul, you've been on quite a few interviews promoting the work that you're doing. So is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often when you're being interviewed?
Not that question, Dom, because I have never thought of that.
Yeah.
No, you know what? I think we covered everything. I think a reality behind writing is that it can be isolating and you can feel like you're the only one. So I highly recommend that everybody find a group. I mentioned earlier I have this online writing group. It's 7 days a week. It's for women over 40. And figure out what you're like. If you want a niche, I prefer it for various reasons. Find a group. It's difficult because people who haven't written a book will all, like 90 something percent, say, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book. Oh, I want to write it." And I will tell people, "Well, write it." But until you've written a book, you're not going to understand what it's like to write a book. Until you market your own book, you're not going to know what it's like to market your book. So find like-minded people. I also think it's important to find people a step or two ahead of you to sort of motivate you and who might be able to help mentor you. But yeah, no, and try to have fun with it, really. I think I have used more tissues than I have laughed, but that's changing. I would not change this for the world. I would not. I am so grateful I have this opportunity to write and to figure this out. But to do it properly, it does take work. So I guess that's it. I mean, Dom, I know how to get my little message in everywhere.
Me likey. That's right indeed. That means I don't have to earn my pay today. That's good.
And if anybody's interested, I have a Substack, which is a newsletter, and it's at dianehatz.substack.com. Please feel free to follow me. I'm building a community of people. And I think all of us indie writers need to support each other because it can feel very competitive. I think that there needs to be conscious effort to be supportive, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping to do with this new career is to build a community of writers who support each other. The rising tide lifts all boats, and I truly believe that.
There you go. And sometimes those boats have food. So if your book Rock Gods and Messy Monsters, if that book of yours were a food, what would it be and why?
Oh my God. What would my book be? It would probably be heirloom grown, hand harvested wheat made into pasta with a vegetarian bolognese made by a Michelin star chef, mixed together and thrown at a wall.
Uh, I guess that's gonna be the theme for the episode. Use your noodle to get more boodle. Throw the noodles at the wall.
I didn't think about that. But it's absurdist, so I don't know. It's delicious, but it's surreal. There's a little Salvador Dali in the work.
Ah, yes, that's right indeed. A creative cover with the multiple colors. It's the creative. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. And hey, it's like a rock album cover anyway. So I mean, hey, what can you expect? It fits the wonderful genre, or at least the wonderful details that lie within. That's right indeed. That lie within indeed. So my goodness, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but you're still in 2023, what advice would you give to yourself?
Wow. Just hike and road trip for as long as you can. Let go of material, let go of outer. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I think there are so many problems that the rat race is just a stress that no younger person needs to put on them. on themselves. So search inward. The outward stuff means nothing. And eat pie. Lots of pie.
Yeah. You're one of those guests that's welcome back anytime on this show.
Thanks, Dom.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. It's always great when my nonsense actually comes back into the actual recording. That means the mind control is working. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Hopefully the mind control worked enough to where folks are gonna come to your wonderful page on Amazon, buy the boatloads, buy the Titanic load without the crashing, and they will buy thousands upon thousands of copies of Rock Gods and wear it on their heads like it's a pyramid. So my goodness, so for those who need to buy copies of your book and keep up with your journey, what's the best way for folks to do so?
You can get more information at rockgodsandmessymonsters.com. And you can just search for it on Amazon. That's probably the easiest way. And it's a little, I hate to say, it's a little cheaper on Amazon. So you'll pay less money if you get it through there. But on my website, I have a universal link that if you click it, it will bring up icons for where it's sold everywhere in the world. So if somebody's in another country, they can just go there to rockgodsandmessymonsters.com. And then if anybody is interested in my Substack, it's dianehatz.substack.com. I think dianehatz.com redirects there also. So, my last name's Hatz. That's another way to stay in touch. And yeah, anybody, please feel free to get in touch. I mean, I'm busy writing, but I always have time for a like-minded soul.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Reach out to the delightful Diane, indeed. Keep up with all the stuff that she's doing. We're going to put a link to her Substack and her book in the show notes, indeed. So that way you can dive into both. That's right, indeed. Might even have that wonderful journey to search inward yourself and then strike it out and go on your own metaphorical inward gold rush, indeed. So, my goodness, any parting words before we close up shop, Diane?
Don't give up. Just don't give up.
Thanks a bunch for investing your time by listening to this wonderful podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you really did, do me a solid and leave a review or share this episode with at least 3 people that you think would get some value out of today's content. Advance others to advance yourself.